In the heart of Italy, where narrow streets embrace the weight of history and villages cling to the slopes of ancient hills, hiding secrets older than memory, a strange and powerful phenomenon was born. One that would come to shape the destiny of nations: the Mafia. What began as small local groups protecting their people would evolve into one of the most complex criminal networks in human history, a hidden empire that would one day control money, politics, and power from Sicily to New York, and far beyond. But this is not a story about gangsters. It's the story of an institution, a shadow government with its own laws, traditions, and code of silence. An invisible hand that influenced everything, from the smallest village disputes to the rise and fall of global empires. Behind every dark deal, behind every mysterious decision made in a quiet town or a glittering city, there was always a shadow, a whisper, a name: the Mafia. In this documentary, we'll travel across the centuries, from medieval Sicily's muddy roads to the glittering mansions of modern power, to uncover how a band of local protectors became one of the most enduring and feared organizations in modern history. This is not just a tale of crime, it's the story of control, fear, and the silent system that ruled entire societies without ever showing its face. Sicily, a land of sunlight and blood. For centuries, its fertile soil made it a prize for conquerors. The Normans came, then the Arabs, then the Spanish, the French. Each left behind new rulers, new taxes, and new wars. But for the people who lived on this island, the farmers, the shepherds, the poor, one thing never changed: fear. Their crops were rich, their fields abundant, but their lives could be stolen in an instant. Foreign soldiers demanded tribute, local lords demanded loyalty, and the state, weak and distant, offered no protection. Out of this chaos, a new kind of power began to rise. Men from within the villages, strong, cunning, and respected, offered something the government never could: safety. But it came with a price. Protection didn't mean peace. It meant submission. These men of honor imposed their own justice. If a neighbor stole from another, they punished him immediately. If someone refused to pay his share, he was cast out, or worse. Over time, their authority grew. Villagers began to see them not as criminals, but as the real judges, the real rulers. The word omerta, silence, became sacred. The community obeyed, out of loyalty, out of fear. Families and blood ties turned into the foundation of an invisible order, a new power system that lived inside the people, yet stood outside the law. At first, it was about protecting crops and land, but soon, it spread to markets, trade routes, and ports. Every deal had its share. Every conflict was settled by a man whose name carried more weight than any official seal. This was the first face of the Mafia, a shadow authority that ruled not through written law, but through silence, loyalty, and blood. By the late 19th century, Sicily was changing. Railroads cut through the countryside, ships filled the harbors, and cities began to hum with trade and ambition. But beneath the surface, the same invisible hand still pulled the strings. The men who once guarded wheat fields now guarded fortunes. They controlled the flow of goods, the contracts, the votes. If you wanted to buy land, build a house, or even open a small shop, you needed permission, not from the state, but from them. The honored society was no longer just a whisper in the countryside. It had become a structure, organized, disciplined, and bound by blood. Each family had its territory, its code, its own hierarchy of soldiers and bosses. They operated like a shadow government, with rules stricter and punishments swifter than any court could deliver. In Palermo, the capital of Sicily, the Mafia's influence grew bold. Politicians who promised to fight them were soon seen shaking hands in dark alleys. Police chiefs who swore to root them out suddenly retired. Justice in Sicily became negotiable. But what made the Mafia unstoppable wasn't just fear. It was trust. Within their ranks, betrayal was rare because it was fatal. A man's word meant more than his life, and silence, omertà, was the glue that held their empire together. To outsiders, they looked like bandits. To the poor, they looked like protectors. But to each other, they were something else entirely. Brothers in a sacred brotherhood, born from chaos, fueled by loyalty, and destined to outlive any government. By the time the Italian state realized what it was facing, the mafia wasn't just part of society. It was society. When the ships left Sicily for the New World, they carried more than people. They carried habits, customs, and codes, invisible cargo woven deep into the souls of those who sought a better life. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, thousands of Sicilian immigrants arrived in New York, New Orleans, and Chicago. They came with little more than the clothes on their backs and the memory of a homeland ruled by silence and survival. When the ships left Sicily for the New World, they carried more than people. They carried habits, customs, and codes, invisible cargo woven deep into the souls of those who sought a better life. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, thousands of Sicilian immigrants arrived in New York, New Orleans, and Chicago. They came with little more than the clothes on their backs and the memory of a homeland ruled by silence and survival. Life in America was harsh. Crowded tenements, low wages, discrimination. The promise of the American dream felt distant. And so, the old networks quietly reawakened. Men who knew how to survive in Sicily began to organize once again, this time among the cobblestone streets of Little Italy. At first, it was protection, just as it had been in the beginning. Shopkeepers paid a few coins to keep their windows safe. Dock workers paid for peace. But soon, that peace came with a price. The same structure that once guarded farmers' fields now controlled neighborhoods, labor unions, and even politicians. The mafia had crossed the ocean and found fertile ground. By the 1920s, America was roaring. Jazz filled the air, cars filled the streets, and a new law, prohibition, outlawed alcohol but created a golden age for organized crime. The mafia seized the moment. Speakeasies flourished, whiskey flowed like water, and the men who controlled the supply grew powerful beyond imagination. Names like Luciano, Genovese, and Capone became legends, symbols of a dark empire built on loyalty, fear, and opportunity. They dressed like businessmen, spoke like gentlemen, and ruled like kings in tailored suits. But even as decades passed and the old families grew rich and secretive, their roots never truly left Sicily. Every handshake, every oath, every quiet deal in a back room echoed the same ancient code that began in dusty fields under the Sicilian sun. And though the modern world moved on, with skyscrapers, cars, and satellites, the mafia's power endured in whispers. It was not just a story of crime, but of human nature. Our need for power, belonging, and control when chaos surrounds us. So, when you hear the word mafia, remember, it wasn't born in smoke-filled rooms or under city lights. It was born from fear, from survival, and from the eternal human desire to create order, even in the shadows.